Hi, my name is Jaden Stoker, and this is the prototype for my game, The Orchard. When you start up the game, you see this screen. Two buttons, Start and Quit Game. Ironically, Start does in fact put you into the game. I know, very unintuitive. Once you enter the game, you will see a little shadow figure that is you, and this little brown triangle that is a randomly generated tree. You can use A and D to move, and use the arrow keys to switch tools. The left and right arrow key switches between the axe, the wand, and nothing. The axe allows you to cut off branches. The wand allows you to move them. And when you click, you drop them. Using the magic wand and the up and down arrows, you can switch layers to help you build a more immersive forest. Opening the project in Unity looks something like this. It shows the main menu and all that. I'll keep the code explanation primarily in the main menu because everything in the main menu basically explains what I did in the actual game. So now that we're in the main menu, you can watch the Unity engine as it actually grows. Looking on the side, you can actually see that rather than having one object being the tree with a bunch of sub-objects being branches, there's a bunch of individual objects named branches with their parents' sub-branch and then the number of branches that they are. Which, if we look at the scene, Unity, please, I'm begging. You can see that they are all separated into top, where branches can actually spawn, and bottom. Basically dictates, shows you where the bottom and top are, which the bottom is used for both positioning of the branches along the tree trunk. I have a child object that basically dictates the movement of the branch. Is how I did that. So it moves like a child without scaling like a child because I had issues. Post me, put in the issues, please. Thank you. You're the best. Anyways, it also dictates where branches can spawn between branch height and top. I generate a random number, choose a random number between those. That comes down to the base of it. I basically spawn, whenever I make a branch, I spawn a sub branch, give it a bud, have that bud dictate where the branch is going to move, and then I give it a bunch of genes. I'll show that in a minute. If we actually go into the actual game, you can see the player script. The player script is pretty simple. Basically, I have a basic moving script attached to the player, I have a camera default, which helps me determine where the camera is so that way I can do camera jerkiness without having to do too much math, because math is not my friend. Attached to the camera, I have a separate script for moving the camera, so that way I could add camera shake so that way it looks cool, and then I didn't use it. Yay, pointlessness. I should have just attached the camera as a child, I'll be honest. It was not great. And then down here I have the mouse, which has a script basically telling it to follow your mouse cursor and talk friendly so that way I can do the axe and the wand and things. I'll go into the code now. To start with, I'll show you the mouse, like I was telling you about. So to start off, I just declare a bunch of variables. This one basically just tells you if it's something, if it's nothing, the axe or the wand. I have the sprites for the wand and the axe in there. Nunya is basically a blank game object. I gave all the scripts of an actual tree, so that way Unity doesn't throw a fit whenever there's nothing there. And floating basically means the wand is selecting and causing something to float. Is selecting means, hey, I'm selecting something, so that way it doesn't select something else. So on start, it's going to make sure it disables all other visuals on it, so that way it's just the blank object by running this line of code. This one, and this one basically just loops it back. So that way, if you go past the wand or something, you just don't go into the unknown. You instead loop all the way back down to, in the case, the wand, and the other one's the axe. And then if it's 0, there's nothing on the screen to mess with your visuals and cause weird selecting issues. This script basically determines when you click. It's called every update, I think. Yeah, it's right here. But basically, it does a handful of things. The axe is the simpler script for some reason. Basically, it sets the subtree to 1 of that tree so that way it can fall. I'll tell you about all the tree nonsense in just a minute. And then makes it so that way it doesn't grow, because there was a weird glitch where if it grew right as you clicked it, the branch would be in the original position and didn't move with the tree. It was weird. It was weird and would cause weird visuals. This basically says, hey, do nothing if there's nothing there, which also gives me room to add something if need be. I should have done else if, I'll be honest, but yeah, it's live and learn. And then this one makes it so that way whenever you have your mouse over an object, it floats. Originally, if you look at this code, it's going to look like whenever I click, it should be switching back and forth. That's because it should. It doesn't though. So here's some comments saying, please, for the love of God, work. But it didn't work. So here I am with a janky solution that works. This basically allows the tree to go up and down layers. I use the Z-axis rather than messing with the actual sprite editor because it's simpler to just move up and down Z, and we didn't learn how to mess with sprite layers individually. I did not feel like going through the Unity wiki to figure that particular thing out. So this basically determines when it collides with an object. It will show the little, show the little blue outline, and then it will run a handful of scripts behind, so that way if you click on it with the axe, it will actually fall. And when you go over the wand, it will only target that one rather than every branch and anything that it covers, causing one giant mess of tears. This one basically says, I'm no longer colliding with an object, I can collide with something else. And it does that by basically running a couple code over here, saying I can select something else through this, and then also changing the selected object to my Nanya object, which again is a blank object with basically all the scripts telling Unity, yes, I am a tree, definitely. Looking at the tree side of being selected, basically it will run this once it gets selected, which this turns on the outline object, and then it enlarges it so that way it gets bigger, because I had some issues about turning it off for some reason. I don't know. And then it says it's selected an object. Over here we have the axe components, which basically what it does is it sets the subtree to 1. So it says, you're your own person now, be free! And then it tells the branch or tree that it was part of to not count it as a branch anymore and subtract its number of branches by 1. And then gives it a collider. Wand, I didn't put anything in here because I didn't need to. And then unselect basically turns off the outline and shrinks it, because I was redundant over here. Now, time for the scary script. This is the Growinator. It's what makes the trees grow, makes the branching, all that stuff. I could have split it up into probably 2 or 3 scripts, but I felt lazy. Or it was easier to reference everything in one individual script rather than in 3 separate scripts, all like interconnected in a weird, janky way. So I'll tell you what each of these variables do as I go, because I cannot be bothered. So on start, it's going to basically determine, hey, it makes sure that you can have at least one more sub branch after the first one, because just having one branch and then having it stop looked weird. And then it sets its color to the color I predetermined in this code, and then it transforms its size to the start size. And if it's a branch, it gets smaller and tells it, yeah, that's my current size, deal with it. And then over here, you can see where the branch can grow. It's basically determines where that middle value, the branch height is. Basically, it tells it where that is. And then it sets the rotation over here. This sets the Look, this sets the position. I'm not going to go through everything. This basically tells it, hey, grow and branch. And then it positions it so that way, if it's a branch, it's not floating in the middle of it, causing a weird triangle in the middle of another triangle. Originally, I had it so that way I use the Pythagorean theorem and stuff to math out the position that needs to be, but then it'd have some weird issues. If it was near the top of the tree, it would just be floating and stay floating. And then once the tree grew so big, it would just be on the bottom, causing all the trees to just not have branches on top, which was not good. So instead, I created a child object and moved the branch to, so that way its bottom is touching the the child object. So that way it moves like a child without actually being a child, because children do weird things. As I showed earlier, hopefully, if post-edit me is smart and intelligent, like they might be. This one says the time, basically. I should have done time.delta time there, but I'm not messing with time, so whatever. And then this basically sets a random timer for when a branch is going to occur. Like it sets a random number between 0 and the branch chance, and then it slowly counts down that timer. So that way you get randomly generated branches rather than being like, oh, it's been 30 seconds, another branch has grown. That felt boring. So I said no. And then grow has another timer, and then it changes the size a little bit, assuming it's not too big. This is the weird script, because it refers to objects that both exist and don't exist at the same time. Basically, this code here determines the rotation for the branch that's about to be made, and then this determines the position of the sub-branch. This trace position. This is if it's a branch. This is if it's a normal tree, because it requires a slightly different math. And then over here, basically, that this creates the object and then gives it all of its variables. Over here, when setting the variables, a lot of these, not all of them, we apply it by the mutation scale, so that way the trees slowly change and develop over time, which most of it doesn't have super noticeable effect. Over here, we set the color. I use color.lerp because it's how you slowly transition colors through different steps. So we set the random color over here, and then we set the number of times that we do it, and then making sure it's a small number so that way the color doesn't change drastically every time. Because otherwise you get polka dot trees, and gosh darn it, that's not how it's supposed to work, please. So the player movinator, basically, it determines the speed based on public variable and then moves it. This was following a tutorial directly from class, basically. I did the same thing. And then this was because I originally had to be 2-player, and then my brain exploded, and then so it's just 1 player. Always 1 player. But it has the possibility. On start is setting the main menu, or the pause menu, unactive, because I also just made this my player script, because I could not be bothered to create a custom script that did 2 things. And then every update, it checks if you selected a button to move it, and then it checks if you open the menu. Yeah, if you press escape, activates the menu, and then if you press escape again while the menu is open, it turns it off. That's what it does. This, I don't need to explain it. It turns on the animation component, so that way it looks like you're moving, and then moves you. And then this stops you from moving and makes it so that way you don't move weird. But yeah, again, this was just when I had to be 2-player for a hot minute before my brain exploded. Camera movinator is the same thing. I added a little bit of extra math over here, where it's like kept on the count past the player, so that way it would just jolt a little bit based on jolt time. Yeah. And then at the beginning, it gets the player's movement stuff, so that way it makes sure it's moving at the same speed as the player. Which you can see over here, this is a minor variation I made, where it does the jolt timer thing. The pause menu is pretty simple. It's if you press resume, it turns off the menu. If you press exiting, it brings you back to the main menu. The main menu script is pretty simple as well. If you press the start button, it moves you over to the game menu. If you press the quit button, it turns off the application. And that's the code. I'm sorry if that took a while to explain, and I'm even more sorry that you had to listen. This game has a lot of moving parts, because it turns out procedural growth is hard. And despite that, it's still relatively small. Okay, press start, you move, you can chop off a thing, you can move it with a wand, and the wand's buggy, and you can drop it. And now that's another tree. It has, I feel like it has good bones. It has a lot of room to grow. Yeah, I hope you like it. Oh, give me a good grade, gosh darn it. I worked hard on this thing. Please and thank you. Editing me. Make this actually somewhat decent. I don't know.